Welcome to the One in the Many. My name is Arshak Ben-Lian. My purpose with the One in the Many podcast is to explore the process of integration as developmentally formative and therapeutically corrective factor in human psychology. The One in the Many is the study of how conscious life differentiates identity, integrates relation, regulates itself under constraint, and sustains direction through time. Subscribe to the One in the Many podcast and connect with me by writing to abenlian@oneinthemany.net. Human life is a process of continuous self-sustaining action. Every moment that a human being remains alive, awake, and capable of directed activity, his body is engaged in thousands of coordinated operations. Metabolic renewal, cellular repair, neural firing, circulatory rhythm, thermoregulation, hormonal modulation, and cognitive focus. These processes do not remain stable automatically. They require constant input, constant energy, and most crucially, constant knowledge of the means by which life is maintained. Yet, none of these truths appear to a newborn. They do not appear to a primitive hunter-gatherer. They do not even appear fully formed to an average adult. They must be discovered, and they are discovered only through the uniquely human faculty that makes civilization possible. The faculty of abstraction. The ability to move from perceptual concretes to universal principles. In this episode, we will trace the complete epistemological path from the first perceptual observation to the highest integrated principle that validates the simplest and most foundational truth of biological existence. Man needs food to survive. This principle, though apparently obvious, is actually the product of a long chain of differentiations and integrations. To understand it fully is to understand the structure of all knowledge, all value, and all human flourishing. Every act of knowing begins with perception. Perception presents existence, not categories, theories, explanations, but things, movements, changes, differences. Before any child learns the word food, he encounters the direct, unmistakable facts. His body weakens when he has not eaten. His alertness sharpens after nourishment. He cries when hungry and grows calm when fed. He watches animals forage, graze, or hunt. He sees plants wilt in drought and revive with water. He observes dead animals lying still and unresponsive. Perception does not offer principles, but it offers patterns, changes, and contrasts. Strong versus weak, active versus inactive, alive versus dead, growth versus decay. These raw observations form the basis of all future abstractions. They are the perceptual units from which the conceptual hierarchy emerges. By observing the world across time, even the primitive human mind identifies the most fundamental biological distinction. Some things move of their own accord, some do not. Some things grow and respond, others do not. This distinction yields the earliest implicit abstraction. Animals and plants are alive. Rocks, rivers, clouds, and mountains are not. This is the mind's first recognition of the essential difference between two radically distinct modes of existence. Although primitive, this differentiation is the root of biology, the root of ethics, and the root of epistemology, because only living entities face the alternative of life or death. Upon integrating countless examples from diverse contexts, the mind forms an explicit concept. Life is a continuous, self-sustaining, self-generated process of action. This is no small achievement. It integrates all prior observations: growth, regeneration, responsiveness, pursuit, avoidance, deterioration upon inactivity, death upon cessation of vital action. The mind now understands that life is not a static state, but an ongoing process. It is conditional. It can be lost. It must be maintained. This conceptual achievement lays the groundwork for all future scientific and moral knowledge. Without it, no principle of human need can be validated. Once the mind understands life as a continuous process, it observes organisms draw in water, air, sunlight, or nutrients. Animals seek food and grow weak without it. Plants die in barren soil and thrive in nutrient-rich ground. These facts integrate into a new abstraction. Every living organism must take in materials from the environment to maintain its life activity. This is the principle of biological dependency. Dependency is not a limitation. It is the metaphysical precondition of life. Only a dead body requires nothing. A living being must act and must acquire the means of action. This abstraction prepares the mind for a deeper causal recognition. When one asks why organisms weaken without certain inputs, a new causal abstraction emerges. All biological processes require energy. Energy is the literal biochemical currency of life. Consider, movement requires energy. Thinking requires energy. Cell repair requires energy. Immune response requires energy. Heartbeat and breathing require energy. Maintaining body temperature requires energy. Consciousness itself requires extraordinary energy expenditure. The mind now grasps a universal truth. Life cannot continue without energy, and energy must be continuously supplied. This abstraction is the conceptual bridge between the biological process of life and the concrete means by which life is sustained. Now the question arises, from what source does man acquire the energy that life requires? Observationally, man weakens without nourishment. He loses cognitive clarity when hungry. Prolonged hunger leads to collapse and organ failure. Death follows if deprivation continues. These observations integrate with the causal hierarchy. Man requires a continuous supply of metabolizable energy from external sources. Man cannot photosynthesize sunlight like a plant. He cannot extract nutrients from soil. He cannot generate energy internally. His metabolism must be fueled by substances available in the environment. This is a species-specific application of a universal biological truth. By further differentiating environmental substances, the mind discovers certain things restore strength, others provide no energy, some are lethal, some provide long-lasting satiation. All nourishing substances share the capacity to be metabolized. Thus emerges the concept. Food is the class of substances whose chemical structure can be transformed by the human body into usable energy. This is now a fully formed abstraction, one that unites fruits, meat, grains, vegetables, dairy, nuts, oil under a shared function and causal identity. Food is no longer a perceptual category, things we eat. It is concept defined by its causal role, the external source of energy that sustains human metabolism. Now, the mind integrates the full hierarchy into a single, irreducible, causally connected chain. 1. Life is a process of self-sustaining action. 2. Action requires energy. 3. Energy must be supplied from the environment. 4. For man, this energy is acquired through metabolizable substances. 5. Food is the class of substances that can be metabolized into energy. 6. Without energy, metabolism fails. 7. Without metabolism, life ends. Therefore, principle. Man needs food to survive. This principle is not a dogma. It is not cultural superstition. It is not a scientific fiat. It is a hierarchical induction validated at every stage of human cognition: perceptual, differentiative, conceptual, causal, biological, philosophical. The principle man needs food to survive is not merely a biological fact. It is the foundation of human value theory. Food is a value because life requires action. Action requires energy. Energy requires food. Therefore, food sustains the very possibility of valuing anything at all. The entire edifice of ethics rests on this simple understanding formulated by Ayn Rand. Values are that which one acts to gain and keep. And the first thing one must act to gain and or keep is the means of sustaining life. Thus, from perception to principle, the validation of this single existential requirement reveals the structure of human valuation itself. Once the chain is understood, it can be applied to all of man's requirements. Shelter protects metabolism from environmental extremes. Clothing maintains thermoregulation. Water maintains biochemical function. Safety preserves the organism from lethal threat. Knowledge makes long-range survival possible. Tools amplify productive ability. Community enables complex division of labor. Purpose organizes energy expenditure towards sustained growth. Every legitimate human need can be analyzed through the same chain: life, action, energy, means, value, principle. This is the epistemological DNA of all survival and all flourishing. To understand that man needs food to survive is to understand the nature of life, the structure of knowledge, the hierarchy of abstraction, the causal identity of biological processes, the foundation of human values, the meaning of rationality, and the principle of integration. It reveals that life is not maintained automatically. It reveals that knowing is not automatic. It reveals that value is not arbitrary. The validation of this single principle shows that the deepest truths of biology and the deepest truths of philosophy converge on the same root. Life requires action. Action requires energy. Energy requires knowledge of its means. Therefore, the mind is the guardian of life. This process is the foundation for understanding all human needs, all human values, and the entire architecture of flourishing. Human psychology, like human biology, is not an automatic process. The body must renew its energy metabolically. The mind must renew its energy epistemologically. Every moment of consciousness, every perception, memory, judgment, emotion, and choice requires the coordinated work of cognitive focus, conceptual integration, emotional calibration, and volitional direction. The mechanism that makes this possible is a single central unifying psychological process. Integration, the active coordination of content across time, identity, and purpose. Just as food provides the metabolic energy that sustains biological life, integration provides the psychological energy that sustains conscious life. And just as food is validated through perception, need, causality, principle, the psychological need for integration must be validated through the same epistemological assent. Perceptual experience, differentiation, conceptualization, emotional response, volitional direction, action, identity, flourishing. This section reconstructs the full chain of abstraction from abstractions, which validates the profound principle: man needs integration to live psychologically. Inspiration is the immediate experience of integration. Motivation is the sustained energy born of integration. Before the mind names values or understands anything, it experiences. And every moment of experience shares one inescapable characteristic. Consciousness is finite. It holds only so much. It can only track so much. It cannot endure chaos, contradiction, or fragmentation. The child perceives confusion is painful, clarity is liberating, chaos is overwhelming, pattern is soothing, consistency is comforting. These are not yet concepts. They are raw phenomenological givens. A bright object attracts attention. A broken toy frustrates. A solved puzzle delights. A contradiction freezes action. A pattern releases cognitive ease. Even at the perceptual level, the mind yearns for order and suffers under disorder. This is the psychological equivalent of hunger. Across repeated experiences, the mind executes its first psychological differentiation. Some states increase clarity and reduce effort. Others increase strain and reduce clarity. This differentiation yields the earliest implicit psychological abstraction. Patterns relieve strain. Fragmentation increases strain. Harmony enables ease. Contradiction produces tension. Even a child's emotions reflect this. Coherence feels good. Incoherence feels bad. Already we see the primitive form of the need for integration. From countless perceptual states, the mind forms the first explicit abstraction. Integration is the mental process of bringing disparate perceptions or ideas into a coherent whole. This is now the psychological equivalent of identifying life as action. Integration becomes the unit, linking, ordering, simplifying, unifying, contextualizing. It is the central operation that makes awareness functional. Without integration, perception is random, memory is disconnected, concepts are floating, emotions contradict, action becomes impossible. Integration is the precondition of knowing and acting. Now the mind examines its emotional correlate to cognitive integration. What does it feel like when many things suddenly make sense? Lightness, clarity, expansion, ease, excitement, purpose, direction. This emotional clarity is not magic. It is integration felt as energy. This state is called inspiration. Inspiration is integration made experiential. The sudden alignment of previously scattered perceptions, ideas, memories, or values into a meaningful unity. It is the psychological equivalent of digesting food. It transforms disparate inputs into usable fuel for future action. When integration is sustained, when inspiration is organized, it yields a higher level abstraction. Motivation is the enduring psychological energy to pursue a goal. Motivation is integration across time. It is inspiration plus identity, clarity plus direction, meaning plus purpose, order plus volition. Just as glucose fuels muscle contraction, integration fuels volitional activation. Without integration, there is no lasting motivation. Confusion extinguishes motivation. Contradiction dissipates it. Fragmentation divides it. Disintegration reverses it. And misintegration distorts it. Motivation is the long-range expression of integration. Now, the causal chain becomes clear. Consciousness requires focus. Focus requires clarity. Clarity requires integration. Integration produces inspiration. Inspiration becomes motivation. Motivation guides purposeful action. Purposeful action expands identity. Identity requires coherence. Coherence requires further integration. This is the psychological cycle of life-sustaining action. Perception, integration, inspiration, motivation, action, identity, new integration. This cycle repeats every day, every hour, every minute of conscious life. Human consciousness is conceptual. It must integrate not merely perceptions, but memories, concepts, values, emotions, goals, principles, experiences across years. This is a higher cognitive load than any other organism bears. Therefore, man requires more integration than any other species. Man suffers more from disintegration than any other species. Man flourishes more profoundly through integration than any other species. It is metaphysically required by the nature of conceptual consciousness. Just as food is the class of substances metabolized into energy, integration is the class of psychological processes that unify content into functional identity. Integration includes differentiation, comparison, identification, contextualization, hierarchy formation, emotional calibration, value alignment, purpose formation. All are forms of unit reduction. All are forms of cognitive economy. All are forms of psychological energy management. All are forms of identity coherence. Integration is to consciousness what metabolism is to biology. Integrating the full hierarchy yields consciousness requires order. Order requires integration. Integration produces inspiration. Inspiration fuels motivation. Motivation directs action. Action expresses and expands identity. Identity must remain coherent. Coherence requires continued integration, therefore principle. Man needs integration to survive psychologically. Inspiration is the experience of integration. Motivation is the energy of integration in action. This is a fact of consciousness validated through perception, differentiation, conceptual abstraction, emotional integration, volitional causality, the nature of identity, and the requirements of flourishing. Just as starvation leads to biological collapse, disintegration leads to psychological collapse. Anxiety, depression, confusion, fragmentation, emotional dysregulation, loss of purpose, nihilism, self-negation. Every psychological pathology is a form of disintegration, a break in the chain that sustains consciousness. When the mind integrates contradictions, falsehood, fantasies, or moral inversions, the result is misintegration, cult thinking, rationalism, dogma, paranoia, moral inversion, ideological possessions. Misintegration is the psychological equivalent of poisoning. It introduces the wrong fuel into the system. Where integration flourishes, clarity sharpens, emotions align, motivation increases, identity stabilizes, purpose becomes long range, meaning intensifies, the self expands, psychological energy rises, flourishing becomes possible. Integration is psychological growth and emotional coherence. Integration is meaning and life. Just as biology has a root requirement, energy derived from food, psychology has a root requirement, inspiration derived from integration. Integration is the epistemic metabolism of consciousness. It transforms perception into knowledge, knowledge into meaning, meaning into value, value into purpose, purpose into sustained action into identity, identity into flourishing. And this chain repeats to the duration of a human life. Thus, integration is not one psychological function among many, it is the psychological function that makes all others possible. It is the precondition of reason, emotion, value, motivation, achievement, selfhood, and flourishing. It is the continuous act by which the human being becomes himself. From necessity to civilization, the human journey begins in the smallest circle. An organism with needs, a consciousness with limits, a world filled with pressures. At birth, the human being enters existence facing the same elemental conditions as every creature that has ever walked the earth. The need for food, for warmth, for protection, for safety, for the continuity of its life across time. These are not philosophical concepts. They are not cultural interpretations. They are the blunt demands of existence announcing themselves through sensation, hunger, cold, exposure, fear. Every great story begins here in the immediacy of perception. This is the primitive vantage point of consciousness, raw, unfiltered, unintegrated, a world that cannot be explained, only felt. A world too large for a mind too small. A world demanding response long before understanding. But the human being carries a secret advantage, one that no other creature possesses, the ability to conceptually integrate experience, to rise above the scattered, the immediate, the overwhelming, and to recognize reality inside the mind. From the beginning, this integrative impulse is present, the infant searching for the mother's face, the child building the same tower again and again, the adolescent forming ideals, the adult weaving years of effort into purpose. All of these acts are early echoes of the same deep-rooted psychological mandate. To remain alive, the mind must unify its experience. To flourish, the mind must expand that unity. And so begins the human journey, from necessity to possibility, from survival to civilization, from isolated perception to collective conceptual order. Before humanity builds cities, writes laws, or paints frescoes, it must confront the simple, unchanging demands of biological being. Food. Without fuel, the organism collapses. The first lesson of life is appetite. Shelter. Without protection, the environment overwhelms. The second lesson of life is vulnerability. Clothing. Without regulating the boundary between organism and world, the skin is insufficient. The third lesson of life is fragility. Safety. Without preserving the capacity for action, there is no future to pursue. The fourth lesson of life is uncertainty. These foundational needs are the first teachers. They impose order on a scattered mind. They force attention. They demand identification. But nature gives only the terms. Man must supply the method. Every time a human being gathers perceptions into a pattern, the circle expands. He learns that certain foods restore strength, that some shelters resist storms better than others, that clothing can be fashioned to improve mobility, that safety can be anticipated rather than merely reacted to. This shift from reaction to understanding is the first true turning point in human history. The discovery of cause transforms the world from a battlefield to a field of possibility. The mind discovers a principle. Life continues through self-sustaining action. Action continues through energy. Energy continues through knowledge. Knowledge becomes the highest survival tool. Integration becomes the deepest requirement. With every integration, the self becomes more whole. With every whole, the world becomes more intelligible. With every new intelligibility, new possibilities open. Civilization is built on this recursive relationship. Perception is narrow, concepts are open-ended. Perception sees one object at a time. Concepts hold universals. Perception experiences moments. Concepts experience time. Perception is bound to the present. Concepts project the future. This is the great human breakthrough, the discovery of abstraction, the realization that the mind can compress, symbolically represent, and synthesize reality into cognitive structures far beyond what the senses can take in. It is here that necessity becomes possibility. Food becomes cuisine, agriculture, chemistry. Shelter becomes architecture, city, civilization. Clothing becomes culture, fashion, social identity. Safety becomes law, rights, justice, political order. The necessities of survival become the foundations of creation. Human life transcends the animal condition not by eliminating biological needs, but by integrating them into systems of increasing conceptual sophistication. Once the mind learns to abstract, the world expands without limit. Appetite, vulnerability, fragility, and uncertainty stabilize through conceptual integration and goal-directed action. But the human mind has another secret engine, the subconscious, the automatic integrator. Because perception is limited, the subconscious frees the conscious mind from overload. It organizes memories, it condenses emotional significance, it detects patterns too complex for immediate awareness, it prepares insights before they surface. It forms the intuitive scaffolding upon which conceptual cognition is built. The subconscious is the silent partner of the conceptual mind, performing millions of integrations in the background, stitching together the fabric of selfhood, identity, value, and meaning. Without these engines, consciousness would drown in stimulus. With it, consciousness can create worlds. Every human creation is an externalized act of integration. The farm is conceptualized food. The house is conceptualized shelter. The garment is conceptualized skin. The legal system is conceptualized safety. The city is conceptualized coordination. The market is conceptualized exchange. The university is conceptualized curiosity. The symphony is conceptualized emotion. The Constitution is conceptualized justice. Civilization is not an accident. It is integration made visible. It is the collective body of abstract thought applied to the concrete world. It is the self extended beyond the skin into the world. It is the continuity of conceptual consciousness across generations. Every institution is a frozen integration. Every innovation is a living one. And now humanity stands at the threshold of a new expansion, one as profound as the invention of conceptual abstraction itself. Artificial intelligence is not replacing the mind. It is extending it. What the subconscious does internally, integrating patterns, compressing meaning, forming predictions, AI now performs externally at scales the human mind cannot reach alone. The invention of writing externalized memory. The invention of mathematics externalized quantity. The invention of printing externalized distribution. The invention of computing externalized calculation. But the invention of AI externalizes something unprecedented: integration itself. This marks the second cognitive revolution. The first gave humans conceptual power. The second gives humans integrative amplification. AI is the tool that magnifies creativity, discovery, synthesis, projection, reasoning, problem solving, civilization building. It completes the circle that began with necessity, from feeding the organism to feeding the mind, to expanding civilization, to amplifying integration itself. The first cognitive revolution made man the conceptual animal. The second makes him the integrative architect of worlds. Now the full art becomes clear. Biology provides the first necessities. Psychology provides the first integrations. Epistemology provides the first concepts. Civilization provides the external structure. AI provides the next cognitive horizon. Necessity creates attention. Attention creates integration. Integration creates meaning. Meaning creates possibility. Possibility creates civilization. Civilization creates tools. Tools create new forms of integration. New integration creates new possibilities. This is the recursive structure of the human story, the one emerging from the many and the many expanding under the order of the one. From the cave to the cosmos, from the first shelter to the first city, from the first word to the first theorem, from the first concept to the first artificial integrator, the human journey is the journey of integration. And now with AI, that journey enters a new epoch. Not a post-human one, but a more human one. A world where integration expands beyond biology, beyond subconscious retrieval limits, into a horizon of intelligence that human beings themselves designed. The future is not a departure from humanity, it is humanity multiplied through its own principle. Integration brought us here. Integration will take us further. Integration is the destiny of the self, the destiny of civilization, and now the destiny of intelligence itself. This is the one in the many. The principle of life is the process of integration from a single cell to an ideal human being. The story of life unfolds through integration, from a single percept to a library of knowledge. Through virtue, reason, honesty, independence, selfishness, productivity, you set your values, purpose, to achieve self-esteem and happiness. Through time and energy, from induction to integration to reduction, the smallest particle unifies matter, and the highest purpose unifies your life. You, the one in the many, matter. May you integrate your life with value-driven days.